switching tack this afternoon. So for this session, we really want to talk to you. You know, we hear this all the time about research ending up as dusty tomes on shelves. How do we get it out there, and how do we create impact? And specifically, how do we do that in Learnovate? Now, of course, our remit, it's our DNA to undertake research that creates impact. And as members and stakeholders in Learnovate, you're probably familiar with the idea that we do produce research reports, custom research projects, often funded through innovation vouchers, participating in working groups, licensing IP, plus many, many more. And all these activities are meant to support our members in real impact terms. But I want to talk to you about one today that you may not be as familiar with, and it's when we do research through commercialisation fund projects. The description is there on screen from Enterprise Ireland, and it's about looking for deep research. And that's what I want to kind of differentiate today, is this idea of looking to deep research and how can we pull it out into the real world to have impact. Early in Learnovate's history, we were very privileged to be associated with Soapbox Labs, who basically benefited from this approach. And we had deep research which led to a voice recognition tool for childhood education, and was accessed over 100 million times by over 2 million children prior to being acquired in 2023 by the United States firm Curriculum Associates. I think it's a real testament to the Soapbox team that on acquisition, they were actually turned into the AI research lab for Curriculum Associates, securing over 45 high-quality research jobs here in Dublin. So we'll say that might be the poster child, but we continue on with this approach. And what you see here are 3 other spin-out companies coming out of Learnovate, or have come out of Learnovate recently. We have Alpaca, which you would have heard this morning, which is digital assessment, hoping to assist in the treatment and interventions for dyslexia. Integrity IQ, a platform around ethics and trying to stop forms of bribery, corruption, etc. And currently in play, Diatima, one we're very excited about in terms of an AI-powered assistant around formative feedback for written assessments. So what I'm saying is, this is not one that possibly highlights as much as other areas of what we do, but spun out 24, 25, and coming in 26. All commercial enterprises. I draw your attention to the PI's names, because they're people that we have encountered across our journeys, and we're working with them to spin out. In this brief slot today, what I want to talk to you about is one that's just emerging now, and it's called First Support, and basically it's an intervention model to kind of profile lack of motivation in first-year undergraduate students and try and assist them. But what I do draw your attention to as well is the name of the principal investigator, because this is the first one that's coming from inside Learnovate. And again, that's something we see as a new direction, and we're very pleased about. What I want to do next is just talk you through the kind of research we're talking here that leads to a different route to market. So we always at Learnovate like to start with big problems. We call ourselves problem hunters. And what we can see here are various statistics around dropout rates for first-year undergraduates. It was a challenge that I'd encountered in my own life through my own children. And so it was very meaningful for me, and we put a lot of time into it. You can see here figures from Europe, United States 23.3%, and indeed Ireland 11%. And while obviously that makes it look like we're doing pretty okay at this, that's still probably about 5,000 students, who are dropping out. And remember, dropout is the sharp end of the wedge. Bottom right there, you can see 29% of UCD students reported academic motivational concerns in the first semester. So this is the problem that we pointed ourselves at. And we decided to take an amotivation approach to it. Now, amotivation is the negative form of motivation. It does not mean lack. It's actually the problem, and it involves very strong negatively held beliefs about ability, effort, value, and task characteristics. and they are statistically related to negative outcomes. This is the pitch within motivation and academic motivation where we decided to play. If I had a day, I'd go through why we ended up with nudges, but suffice to say, through a lot of research, we saw nudges emerging as a good way to treat this intervention. Because nudges, as you probably are aware, leave that sense of control. They're not mandating change, they're kind of supportive, and we felt appropriate for this a bit. So our design meant that it was problem-led, dealing with a real-world problem. It was targeted at the module level. So you're doing computer science, it mightn't be computer science, it might just be that one on engineering that's causing you trouble. It was linked to real-world performance. It was data-driven to profile the level of motivation and the nature of that motivation within students. Personalized in terms of then the response nudges were targeted to the specific profile, and the messages and nudges themselves were designed in line with motivational theory, specifically Keller's academic theory of motivation. Kind of worked like this in the research phase. So we used inventories to profile students before any intervention. We also measured real-world behaviours. And that gave us a profile of students, so we could see how motivated are they along a scale. And then we could also see what's the nature of that motivation. Is it ability-led or is it value-led? At this point, we deployed the relevant nudges to the students over a 2-week period. And after that, we ran the same inventories and took the same real-world behaviours. I will point out that the real-world behaviours, actually, we took them over a full semester to see was there long-term effect rather than just immediate post-intervention effect. Again, I'm going to fly through these with the limits of 8 minutes, but in experiment 3, we had 135 first-year undergraduate participants over 2 academic years. I just draw your attention to our measurements of motivation, and at the bottom 2 you can see in the light purple, because they were the motivated students. We don't expect this tool to have any effect on students who aren't motivated. Those who were ability dominant showed a statistically significant reduction in the ability subscale. Likewise, those who were value dominant showed a statistically significant reduction in the value subscale. And if you look at all the other figures, it didn't have any effect anywhere else. So the targeted effect seemed to have impact on motivation. Moving to the real world measures, ability and motivation is linked with performance. So if we take those in the low performance category, they would be the target. Those who received the ability nudges, as you can see, had the biggest increase across all the others, which act as controls, including the other low ability group who received the value nudges. So once again, evidence of it having impact where it should in real world behaviours. Likewise, value and motivation is linked to maladaptive or poor behaviour. And in this case, we used hits on the VLE because they're not mandatory. It's up to you if you want to go on the VLE or not. This is the target again, those who had low value and were showing the lowest hits on the VLE. And you can see this target group actually had quite an increase in hits on the VLE. If you compare against every other group, they all dropped. So while statistically significant, it's also really relevant that it hit exactly where it should and had no effect on the others of any significance. That's a lot of research. But what we actually see here is a tool that's shown evidence, going back to my talk earlier on, shown evidence of having an impact and impact where it's needed. So now we are moving it into this commercialization fund, and we want to see if we can develop this into a tool that will automatically profile students by breadcrumbs they leave across various digital trails, and then automatically dispatch targeted nudges to support them. What does this mean for you as both members and stakeholders? Well, maybe what we're going towards here is a product that could support your organisation, or indeed any of the other ones that I referred to. It could be a product you might want to discuss a bit further in terms of collaboration, or maybe you have an idea that could benefit from this kind of deep research approach and then moving on to product development. And of course, all the core projects that we do in Learnovate have the potential to move on to this kind of activity. So I encourage you to always keep involved in core projects that you feel are relevant to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Next up, I would like to invite Helena Ledermann from Learnovate and Dr. Keith Johnston from Trinity College Dublin to showcase one of the European competitive projects that we are involved in.
So good afternoon, everyone. Forgive my croaky voice. I think it's staying relatively okay for the next 8 minutes, but I am so delighted to share with you a window into another side of the work that we do in Learnovate, contributing to European competitive projects. And today, myself and Keith, we're going to talk with you about empowering teachers to create their own digital learning content. My name is Helena Ledermann. I'm a pedagogy researcher in Learnovate. Dr. Keith Johnston is from the School of Education in Trinity College, and he's going to share a project he's leading on, and we call it Teacher Digital Content Creation Competencies, or TD3C for short.
Okay, so thank you, Helena, and good afternoon, everyone. So the backdrop or the context to this project is provided by the heightened interest in two key areas in recent years. Firstly, the digital competence of educators as reflected in the generation of a number of key models and frameworks globally, including the one which we're likely to be most familiar with at the European level, that being the European Framework for the Digital Competence of Educators, or DigiComp EDU for short. In addition, digital education content, sometimes referred to using the abbreviation DEC, is also a priority area for the EU in recent years, being prominent within the Digital Education Action Plan, which runs from 21 to 2027, and also by the establishment of a European Commission expert group on digital education content in 2023. So these types of initiatives, they provide the policy context, but there's also a practice dimension also, with the production and consumption of DEC increasing on foot of the COVID online teaching experience. So we know that many teachers are already involved in content creation at various levels. So it's against this policy and practice backdrop that this project seeks to address the competencies which enable teachers to create digital education content as reflected in the objectives detailed here. The project is really about the generation of a scaffolding framework which would support teachers with their digital content creation by identifying key stages or steps, along with the creation, trialling and iteration of related support materials. So teachers are really central to this project. Their insights help inform the TD3C framework, and their trialling of the framework and their creation and implementation of digital content in the classroom are core aspects of the project.
And here we have our project consortium. So it comprises of 4 countries, including ourselves and Ireland. We also have Finland, Portugal and Italy. In Finland, we're working with the University of Jyväskylä and their partner school Learnovate. In Ireland, Learnovate and Trinity College, we're working with our partner school Edmund Rice College, and I'll speak more about them later. And in Portugal, we are working with an organisation called Nucleo and their partner school, and in Italy, the Istituto Comprensivo di Tognolo, which is near Pisa. The project began in October 2023, and the first pilot has culminated, and these were 3 of the in-partner meetings. In December, we were in Pisa to kickstart the project. In September in 2024, we travelled to Jyväskylä to join together midway through the project when the teachers were using the framework that Keith was going to speak about next. And we culminated the project in Portugal in May 2025, where teachers shared back the end of the first pilot.
Okay, so this is the TD3C framework, and it sets out a series of steps that a teacher can follow to generate content. So in that regard, it's very much a process-orientated framework. It prompts the teacher to consider and make decisions regarding, for example, the intended learning, the pedagogical approach to be adopted alongside the content, the digital application to be utilised, alongside key considerations such as how to embed accessibility within the content and adhere to copyright and fair use principles. A key element also is a self-evaluation checklist which teachers can use to review and reflect on their content once created. So this slide really reflects the evidence base for the TD3C framework, so the underpinning research in effect, including the significance of stakeholder consultation, specifically teachers and also domain experts, alongside a scoping literature review. It also highlights how the resources and materials generated were informed by the competencies which were identified from the literature and also from teachers' insights re what they perceived as useful support materials and resources, again reflecting the centrality of teachers in the project.
Yeah. And so this was our partner school in Dublin, Edmund Rice College, near the Phoenix Park. They were our TD3C champions in every sense of the word, and I think we've been very privileged to work with them. Not only did they embrace the project, but they engaged so much in workshops and iterations so that we could reach the end of the pilot, ready to reiterate for the next phase. From left to right, we have Chris, Joe, Rachel, Stacey's deputy principal, Dermot and Colin. And while they look like they're posing for an album cover just there, I can assure you they were very much busy during the year. So at the end of our first pilot in Portugal, where we culminated pilot 1, all of the teachers that participated, so 25 teachers, were sharing the work that they'd done thus far. A lot of the questions that were generating this sharing back involved, did the content support the learning? What were the student feedback? How did we evaluate that? How might we respond to that? What went well? What could we do differently next time? What can we do with the framework to support you more? It's worth noting that a variety of subject disciplines were used and represented, the full spectrum of STEAM, and a variety of digital applications. This project is not to promote a digital tool, it's to promote good pedagogy. And in the slide we have here, with our Irish contingent, we had Chris and Joe using collaborative learning on Padlet, focusing on analysing key moments and plays in the curriculum and persuasive writing. Rachel using Nearpod for geography and oil exploitation. Dermot trying to promote Irish pronunciation using iMovie and also using visual reality. And Colin Sheehan was also working on Nearpod and Trinket for computer science. At the end of this in-person sharing, we conducted post-pilot survey, and some of the results, which I'll share with you in this slide. There is so much to share. So for 8 minutes, we thought, let's share the framework. We're introducing the framework to you. So let's look at the impact the framework had. And the survey was targeting the 5 different phases of the framework, which is the planning, designing, developing, implementing, and evaluating stage, and then an overall survey on the general response to the framework. Did it work for you? So what we noticed was the survey results were very positive overall. Just for some context, remember we have 24 respondents from teachers who have participated in this pilot throughout. So we see that over 95% of teachers reported like strong competence in their digital content creation, with high levels of critical planning, aligning to student need, use of pedagogically sound approaches. Most design content systematically that incorporated multimedia accessibility principles. There's an element of the framework that provides that lateral professional development. While understanding of AI content creation was high and not a core explicit component of the framework, we found that adoption remained below 60%, suggesting a potential reluctance worth exploring. 100% of teachers reviewed and reflected on the effectiveness of the framework, and nearly all saw positive impacts, but particularly on their confidence as teachers. And overall, we can see in the last graph here that over 90% of teachers responded well and received the framework. They said, yeah, I'd recommend it to a colleague. It has helped me support my content creation, maybe in a manner that results in output that was more effective in the classroom, and it met my expectations.
Okay, and we can see the impact of the project reflected in some words from some of the participating teachers. So again, we have some number of quotes here. Obviously, we're not going to go through all of them here and now, but many did report gaining new digital content creation skills and insights into related topics such as accessibility and universal design. And it's evident that engagement with the project and the TD3C framework supported teachers in bringing a level of structure and formality to their content creation that may not have been the case previously. And then a further impact or indeed output from the project is the generation of a significant resource bank, which this week has been collated for the first time on the TD3C website. So a shout out and thanks to Jane for all the work on that. There are 3 resource types available via the website. The TD3C framework in interactive form, examples of digital content created using selected digital applications, and support materials addressing key elements from the framework, including in respect of accessibility, pedagogical approaches, copyright, and universal design for learning. And the next stage then is the move towards what we're referring to as the scale pilot. So what we've seen so far is a lot of the work from the initial pilot. The scale pilot obviously intends to extend the project to more schools, to more teachers, and to more students, with the ultimate goal that the TD3C framework is used by 80 teachers and 4,000 students across the partner countries between now and February 2026.
Okay, so thank you so much for listening. You can find out more by looking at td3c.eu. We encourage you to do so, please. And if you'd like to talk about the project or to find out more, please do come and speak to us at some point in the afternoon. We'd love to talk with you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ilse and I'm a learning researcher with the Learnovate team. And I'm here today together with Mary from Hibernia College to talk about a research partnership that we've conducted over the last couple of years in relation to using online communities of practice. And you'll be happy to know that this is a partnership that's really valued, and Mary and I even coordinated our outfit colours today, so all good here. Next, so just to start off, going back in time a little bit to when communities of practice first became a thing. I think it's the early 90s, so depending on who you talk to, you could say it's either something that's been around forever or something that's only just started. But one thing that is clear is that in that time, we have learned an awful lot on what it means to engage in communities of practice, to learn together, to have conversations together, not just for, to connect and have the conversations, but also to move practice forward. There's a definition up there that I won't read out, but I really encourage you to look at the Etienne Wenger and Beverly Traynor website, because this is very much still alive. This is very much still something that is being developed a lot. So I'll be sharing some of our key research insights, and the first one is that engaging with a community of practice is more than just posting comments. It's more, than being there. There's an emotive side to it, and the real engagement that drives that deeper learning really comes from the heart and the motivation and the frustration at times that people bring to a particular topic or a particular practice. And when that engagement feels authentic, right? So when people can bring their true selves, when they can bring they feel that their opinions are valued, that is when really communities kind of come to life and really thrive. It's not a free-for-all. It's not just to bring everybody together and let everybody talk, and that's sort of a misconception that often kind of persists quite a bit. For a community of practice to really work, you do need a layer of organisation and structure, and that is something that often kind of gets forgotten about or has become a bit of a myth that that's not necessary, but really the communities of practice that work well take that into consideration and design for that. And that's because communities of practice don't really exist in isolation. We're all part of networks, professional, institutional, personal. So really where the impact of a community of practice grows is when we can bring the knowledge, the insights that we have learned through conversations within a community of practice into those other networks, because that's really where you can build your personal identity, but also when you start improving practice. And to do that, over time, we've actually developed, like the DNA of communities of practice has developed quite a bit. And we know that this is becoming a little bit of like buzzword bingo, but it's very true that to the core of a good and thriving community of practice are these strategies that are implemented. So it's about distributed leadership. It's about creating and cultivating a shared purpose and belonging, and sometimes that needs to change. It's about bringing trust or cultivating trust and bringing respect for everybody's opinion and create that psychological safety. And it's about also like offering the engagements to be in flexible formats. It doesn't have to be all online. It doesn't have to be all face-to-face. Sometimes a mix just works really well to keep that engagement going. But ultimately, it's about co-creation, and it's about together improving a certain practice, what it is. Unfortunately, the negative kind of factors that influence participation and thriving of a community of practice are also very, very, very real. There is often a lack of time for active participation, and sometimes the conversation depends too much on a few voices that are heard a little bit too often, as well as uneven participation. But what does this mean for practice? I want to share a few guiding principles to close off before I hand over to Mary. And that's first to remember that learning is deeply emotional and tied to identity for the person, but also for groups. You need to give members real agency. This is not just kind of something that's being brought to people top down. It requires everybody to lead, to set goals, and to shape the activities within the community. Third, and it's very important, is that you do need a certain level of support and you need some structure. And balancing that is really where the sweet spot lies. And finally, if you want to continue your community practice, and you need to continue investing in it. And that means looking at the purpose from time to time and seeing, is what we're doing still relevant, or do we need to change? You need to invest in building those relationships and making sure that, doing that sense check on whether or not it is worth continuing or if there has to be a shift. So all of this will help ensure that the experience of engagement remains a positive one for everybody who's involved, that it remains alive and therefore thriving. And that's not something that always continues to happen. Sometimes it's time to just wind up a community practice, and that's fine when your goals have been achieved. So that's it for the research insights. I just want to hand over to Mary now, because they have over the years implemented communities of practice in their online learning model, and yes.
Great, thanks Ilse.
Thank you.
So, as Ilse said, my name is Mary Kelly. I work with Hibernia College, and first and foremost I want to say that this, what I'm going to talk about, is a real collaboration internally between an academic team and a digital learning design team, where innovation, collaboration really comes together, and we all work with a shared purpose and a shared goal. So I work at Hibernia College. Hibernia College is a blended online college. Postgraduate students, primarily in the teaching space. We have about 2,500 teachers, primary and post-primary teachers on the programme. We have a nursing programme, a Masters in Special Ed and an MA Ed. So we had a community of learners who were dispersed around Ireland. We don't have a campus. And so how then do you engage students? How do you ensure that you offer something that really is meaningful and give them a space when you're not knocking on the library door, when you can't go and meet your lecturer face to face, when you can't drop in and have a coffee in the social room or whatever? What can you do to provide the space? And we were very lucky to work with Learnovate and ensure, I think, that the research that Ilse has spoken about really did underpin the initiative, so that, and we've continued to research and continued to grow, and as Ilse said, continuously reviewing, improving that cycle of making sure what we're doing. So it began for us, as I said, with that research question. How could we, as a college, provide a professional space for our learners to engage and collaborate in a meaningful way? So we knew, our students told us, that there were WhatsApp groups all over the place. So the minute they came on the programme, They could be in a room like yourselves, sitting down beside 2 or 3 of their colleagues, and they'd share their numbers, and there would be a WhatsApp group. The WhatsApp groups grew. We dispersed our students regionally, so there might have been a Wexford cohort group, or a Dublin group, or a Donegal group. But what we were finding and hearing from some of them was that in some instances, the WhatsApp was actually causing them more anxiety, particularly around times when it might come to exams, where you have the last minuter who's in going, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? Panicking, the really disciplined person. Our students spend a lot of time on placement. So they're out in placement, and it's like, oh, Mary Kelly's in Wexford, she might be visiting you, watch out. And there was all these kind of rumours going around, really causing a lot of anxiety for students. So that was the key drive. What could we do as a college to ensure that we would have that digital architecture in place that would take away that anxiety for some students? I mean, there probably will always be WhatsApp groups that we can't look at or can't control, and that's fine. But what could we do, and what did we need to do to provide that space? So as Ilse said, it was really underpinned by collaboration, providing opportunities for collaboration. We know that students are motivated, when they're engaged, their performance is better. We have postgraduate students in the mains who have busy lives as well, so the priorities can shift in their lives at times as well. So it needed to be flexible and agile, accessible to their own world and their own way of learning. And we also know that when they can collaborate, there would be a lower rate of dropout. Now, we are very fortunate. We would have about a 97% retention rate. So that wasn't necessarily an issue for us. It was more around their well-being and their anxiety. So we talked about, I suppose, the benefits of collaboration and collaborative workspaces. We know sometimes that there are challenges too, and I've spoken to some of those. When you have diverse groups of people, when you have diverse groups of learners, things can happen in that space. And I'll talk to you about one example of perhaps the ethics of some of this as well, and what can happen when it goes wrong. So we developed our cohort app. So it is an app. You can go onto the App Store, the students download it, and they have it on their mobile phones. It's a Learn Together platform. And when our students come on the programme, we actually have a full session with the digital learning team and the academic team, actually outlining what the cohort app is about, what the purpose of it is. And it has really rich features, and I think that's what's key to this. It is very modern, it's very easy to use. It has text, it has audio, it has video. I can zoom you on it, I can share a document with it. If we're collaborating on an assignment together, we can edit it together, we can upload it. If I'm a tutor, I can send out a PDF for reading. So really, making sure that it really had everything that we needed in that space. All of our students are research active. They have to complete a thesis. So again, really important that the supervisors, maybe the research supervisors, would be using it too. So very quickly, I think, moving on from the student, we realised that staff, and I think that's always the issue, that staff needed training on this. They needed information about this. There were concerns around it. Who was going to monitor it? Was this mean that I was going to be getting texts from students out of hours, 11 o'clock at night, asking me, Mary, can you send me that PDF that I didn't read, a week ago? So a lot of input, and I suppose a lot of concerns around staff were addressed first. And again, this came back to understanding what was the purpose of it, what was this vision, what was this drive, and ensuring that we held our values too. We are we are training teachers, graduating teachers who we want to be collaborative, who we want to be reflective, who we want to have core ethics. So this needed to reflect those values, and we needed to get buy-in from faculty. We use a lot of adjunct faculty who again are dispersed around the country. How do you ensure that they buy into the goals? So we spent a huge amount of time before we ever launched the app actually ensuring that we had everyone on board and that we were all on the one page. And that took a number of months of trialing, of training, of discussions, of arguments, of challenges back and forward until we actually arrived and we had a tool that we were really happy with and we knew that would work. When it came to students, there weren't those problems at all. They just adopted it. It was their world and they were absolutely delighted to have this space. Because as I said, we knew they had spaces. We knew they were out there working on it, but we wanted to provide it. And so they seamlessly embraced it. It was very, very interesting. It came across COVID. It became really useful. Obviously, you'll all remember school closures was an ongoing thing. You know, every week there was, were they back in school? Were they not in school? Were they going to be online? So we were able to instantly communicate with our students by simply dropping into a text going, yep, you're online this week, guys, you're out in schools, the schools are closed, we'll be back in. We could get the reps together really quickly on it. We had really, high engagement in a time when people were very remote and very, I suppose, nervous around what was going. As I said, we spend a lot of time when the students come on board actually defining what the use of it is. And it is that communication and cohort engaging in an online. We have policies, and I think that's really, really important to say as well. We realise that there was potential perhaps for it to be a negative space. If I didn't like the result that I got, if I didn't like the tutor who came to visit me, would I be suddenly, allowing these students to put in place lots of things and negative things around a particular faculty member? So that was the sort of training that we gave to students. One issue, I suppose, and I think to be realistic, so it doesn't all go swimmingly well. We had an occasion where we had a student who was using expletives in it, but it's very, very interesting. It wasn't us who had to monitor that or pull that student, it was his peers. And they became almost like the monitors as well. So they took responsibility and they called out the behaviour. And he ended up apologising. We had a student disciplinary policy and all of that. So it is interesting when something went wrong in it. It was the professionalism of the peers, and I think that's because it was a professional space, and they understood that from the beginning. So we have about, in the last 30 days, I just looked at the statistics. There were 3,500 users in terms of students, and there were over 500 faculty who were using it in the last 30 days. It is a mixture of peer-to-peer, faculty-to-peer. Faculty-to-faculty is another interesting one that has emerged. So faculty themselves are sharing journal articles, peer review articles, or just information themselves. So it really has, and I think again, I will go back to the research. It is underpinned by strong research, evidence-informed practice, and we are constantly monitoring it, but it has been extremely successful in providing what we set out as a collaborative space for learning for our students. So thank you very much.